Jimmy Kay here, Metal Voice. Look at this. The Metal Voice shirts are now on sale. Just go to the video description to find out on how you can purchase one. Metal!
Here we are on the Metal Voice, and we're trying something different today. A legend, a true legend, fellow Montrealer, Frank Marino himself. Welcome to the show.
Oh, hi guys, how are you?
All right.
Good. Let's just start off with what's new. Okay, we go back in history a bit, Frank, but let's just talk about what you're doing today. I know you got a tour, you got a new DVD. Let's talk about that for now.
Okay.
All right, so tell us about your DVD. It's 4 discs, 56, 58 songs. What is that?
I think there's about 56 tracks on it. It's 6 hours long.
Oh,
and our, the tracks that we do, when we say a track, sometimes we'll do a tune that's a medley of 3 tunes. So, or even 4, because we're jamming a lot. So, we have such a... Mahogany Rush had, a lot of material. So oftentimes, instead of saying, when we're playing a show, here's such and such a tune, bingo, here's such and such a tune, bingo. Sometimes we'll just play 3 in a row, or part of one and 2 of another. So it ends up quite a few tunes. And there's about, I think, 56 parts or tunes, if you want to call it that, on the DVD. It's 6 hours long. It's roughly three 2-hour sets, or
wow.
One's shorter and the next get longer as they go. And it was done by some pretty good people who really know how to shoot, and they had done the producer and the guy that put it all together. They had done, like, I think the last 12 or 14 videos for Bruce Springsteen.
Okay.
So we had that crew. We had the lighting director from that was doing the work for AC/DC and a bunch of those acts. So it looks very good. They shot it really, really well. The audio is... I took a long time fixing some damaged audio on it, and then mixing it. And the audio, I find, is... I think it's better than any of the audio I've ever had on a record in terms of simply audiophile. I'm not talking about the... music, but the sound, because I really approached it a little bit differently, in that usually when you're mixing a live record, you generally take a perspective of, let's say, if you listen to a lot of live records, it sounds like, okay, I'm in the 15th row, or I'm in the balcony and I'm seeing this band, right? That's a typical live record sound. Sounds like you're in a hall at a certain distance. But because this was on a video with very close camera work, I wanted to mix it what I hear when I'm literally on stage at the middle microphone.
Oh, cool.
So, because, people never mix live records like that, and I think they should. Particularly if they are looking at it, visually, and you get these really close-ups, and it sounds like you're hearing it from the 15th row. There's something incongruous about that. So I want the sound to be kind of like what the camera is doing.
Cool.
So I took this sort of method where, because I am the guy at center stage, I have a very clear memory of what I hear when I'm there. And so when I'm mixing it, I know that that this drum has to be a little louder and certain things have to be a little lower, because I know that I'm the one that stands there when I'm standing there all the time. So I did that, and it turned out to be a really, really good thing to do, because it gave a kind of fidelity to the music that you generally don't get on live records. Generally, live records are a little more rough, they're a little more distorted. They're a little more raw, but it gives it a really, really nice fidelity by doing it that way. And so far, everybody has commented pretty much on the sound as much as they have on the picture. So I think it was pretty much the right thing to do.
Great.
And song selection. I mean, this is now it's a little bit different, right? In song selection.
Well, I never wanted to do a DVD. I never really believed in it. I never really believed that you should play rock music on picture. There's a whole reason behind that, but I was reluctant to do it. I'm probably one of the last people to adopt it, if not the last guy in my generation, okay? Because I always found that what happens when I find that if somebody's watching something, it may be wonderful and everything, but they don't get to use their imagination anymore. And when we grew up with rock music, in the beginning, when there was vinyl records and, stuff like that, the big deal was, you'd go and you'd get a record of your favorite act, whoever it was, and you'd put it on a record player, and you'd literally sit there and stare at the cover.
Yeah, for hours.
And you'd read every word and look at the corners. Sometimes you'd even see, printed in Canada. You'd even be reading that.
Flipping it from one side to the other, looking back in the front.
Litho, this and that. So, but what you're doing when that's happening is you tend to be imagining things. Like you're listening to the music and you hear a certain passage in the tune, and it's like, oh, that sounds like they did that at night. Or, oh, I listen to that noise, You'd play it again, you'd hear new things every time because you're using your imagination when you're listening to the music, because there's nothing else except that.
That's right.
And I think it's the same thing when you read a novel. You tend to use your imagination. Yeah, the author can describe things to you. He can say in words, the balcony was made of metal or whatever, but you still have to picture the metal, and maybe you make it a little browner than he thought it should be, or maybe it's got bends in it that he doesn't have, right? So you get to sort of participate in the story of the artist or of the musician when you're not watching it. And so for that reason, I think people actually like music and novels for that reason. Not necessarily that they like it because they like the playing. They do like the playing, but there's something going on psychologically that makes them like it. And I think what's going on is they love the fact that they are pulled in, that they're using their imagination. And so I've avoided video because what happens is when you watch video, when you watch a film of, let's say, a book that you read, or when you watch a video of a band doing a song that you like, you do tend to become a little more of an observer. And there's nothing sort of left to imagine. You have to sort of get your thrill out of saying, I am now observing the way that guitar player is playing, or the way that drummer looks. But you don't imagine anything anymore.
Because your senses.
Yeah.
That becomes missing. Obviously, the same in a movie. We watch a movie. It's a great movie, but there's such a lack of imagining with movies that's why they've had to start using CGI and giving us, King Kong and stuff like that. Because at least now we can start to use our imagination again. The X-Men or whatever we go and see, So that was my reason for being sort of anti-rock video. Not to mention the fact that every time I saw someone do a rock video, they were more like Much Music, more like music television,
right.
Rock videos. And everybody was, driving a car with a good-looking girl, and, it was just like weird. I just found it didn't go with what they were doing. So I was avoiding it for many, many years. And these guys that work for Bruce, this guy said, you're an idiot. You really should do this. Everybody's done this. You're the only guy that hasn't done it. There were videos of me, but they weren't stuff I had participated in. Like, for instance, I played a lot of big festivals, and people got them on film. Some of the Ottawa Blues Fest, stuff like that. There were videos of me with Bill Graham, San Francisco, and stuff. But
Day on the Green, yeah.
I was never the participant in it. It was just somebody that was shooting it or shooting it on their phone. But to actually participate in it and say, here's the way it's going to go, no, I had never done it. So Peter Daniel, who was the executive producer of this thing, he basically said, if you don't do it, I will. And I'm shortening it up, but that's true. And so I didn't think, it was really going to happen. All of a sudden, somebody told me that, I was playing in Cleveland, and someone said, there's 2 trucks here that say they're doing a video for you. Like I was going down to do I said, what? So he actually went through with it. Okay, Peter, had told me if you don't do it, I will, and I couldn't have afforded him anyway because they are some pretty big stuff,
Right.
And so he just did it, and it was like a gift. So I really, at that point, I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm never going to do another one, ever.
Do it right.
So we're going to do one, and we're going to do it in a clean way, like not all, roving cameras and lights and, fire, pyrotechnics and girls. We're going to do it about the music, but we're going to do as much as we can in one day. So we did a 12-hour show.
Oh, wow.
And so I basically, we had the Friday night, we had a 7-hour sound check with the people in the hall.
Jeez.
And then the next day, we started at noon and we finished at 1 in the morning. And I said we're going to do as much as we can from all my old albums, songs we'd never played before. There's songs on this DVD that I never played even with the original band. And so I said, let's just do as much as we can in one day, because I want to get it all done. And I did. So when I ended up mixing it down and fixing it, took many, many years because there was a damage to it, took a lot to fix it, a lot more than I thought it would. I had to fix it because these people had gone to such great degree to do this for nothing.
Wow.
And I'm happy to be a religious guy. I thought it was a gift from God, too. So at that point, I'm saying I want to be thankful for this. And if I'd have just thrown it away just because it was damaged, that would have been a pretty crappy thing to do.
Yep.
So I said, I'm going to fix it. I didn't think it would take as long as it did. But I wouldn't change my mind once I said I'm going to do it. And so I set out to fix the damage. I did fix the damage. And here it is. But I have it down to 6 hours of decent, interesting music. I don't have any of the first night in there. But I have all the most important stuff from day 2. And so then I wrote a book.
A book, too?
There's a book, yeah. There's
included,
a journalist wrote half the book, and then I wrote the last 20 chapters.
It's a lot of
and
chapters.
in the last 20 chapters, I basically telling the story of the last years that I've done this. Like, basically telling you, like what I'm telling you now.
Oh, wow.
I wrote a book, but it's more personal, and it's got a lot more than I just said. And it explains everything from what time this all started till now. So there's a book and a Blu-ray and a DVD set all in the same box. And so far, people are saying they like it.
And you can buy it online, right?
So how do we get this now, Frank?
Well, there's a couple of YouTube trailers out for it. All you have to do is look up, Frank Marino DVD trailer. You'll see there's a long one, there's a short one, and they'll point you to the right place. But you can also simply go to mahoganyrush.net/DVD.
Okay.
And there's a page there that tells you everything, including, get you to the trailers and everything else. So if you go to mahoganyrush.net/DVD, you'll get right to the page. If you simply go to mahoganyrush.com, the front page will have a link to go to where I just said. And if you go to YouTube and write, Frank Marino or our official, Facebook page, I don't really involve myself in Facebook. There's a guy that does it for me. But if you go to that too, you'll find it with the trailers or with the link I just said. But and plus, there's a couple of tunes on the web that have been there for years. Actually, I had uploaded 2 songs from the DVD a long time ago to show people roughly what they were.
Yeah.
So live in Agora.
There's quite a bit up there, but I would suggest that if somebody wants to know what this is, and they're not sure, they should just look up the trailer, Frank Marino trailer DVD. Because that it's a pretty good trailer. It tells you pretty much a lot about it.
Okay, so Frank, let's do a snapshot of your career. I mean, Day on the Green with Bill Graham, major tours back in the day. We'll just take a few things. I'm holding up in my hands right now the Mahogany Rush Live, and of course Tales of the Unexpected. 2 songs for me that kind of encapsulate that whole period would be Sister Change and Dragonfly. I mean, explain what it was like in the late 70s, opening for all these people, and of course having the success that you had.
Look, it was a weird time, particularly in the late 70s. It got a little strange I started in the early 70s. So, by 70, I was getting ready to record my first album. I was 16 when I was born in 54, and I was 16 when I recorded the beginnings of my first album, and that was roughly just after Hendrix had died. He died in September of 70, at which I would turn obviously 16, and then by 17, the album was finished and a record company was putting it out. So we're talking about 71, where I really started. But I had already been playing, gigs and stuff, like local gigs with a couple of friends. So that's sort of when my, how would we say, career began. I didn't look at it as a career. It was something to do, like it was fun. It was just something to do.
16. Right.
Nobody back then, at least that I know of, was sitting around saying, let's start a band to have a career.
Yeah.
That's something that sort of came later. In those days, starting a band or playing in a band was more like what kids might say today if they say, let's take our PlayStation and go to Joe's house and play such and such a,
right.
Call of Duty or something. They're not doing that so that they could end up being video game programmers. They just want to play with their PlayStations with their friends. And so music was the same thing. Let's take our guitars or our drums over to so-and-so's house and play music. It turned into a career. I imagine the same way some video game players end up being programmers.
Yeah, right.
It turned into that, but it wasn't intended. But what happened is, in those days, record companies were basically mining, the earth to look for people they could sign up to their labels because music was making serious money. And artists were the last ones who knew that.
Yeah, that's true.
They were running around, finding people they could make money on without having to pay them, and I was one of them. And so these guys had seen me playing locally to, relatively large crowds of people here in Montreal and around the province of Quebec, and we would do a lot of just free shows. It wasn't unusual to go down to a park, Agora Park or LaFontaine Park or whatever, and just bring a generator and plug in and play music. You didn't need permits and all that stuff in those days. You just went and did what you did, and you just do it. There was things called pop festivals. They didn't call them rock festivals in those days, and they didn't call them shows either. They called them concerts. Yeah. So that's sort of the time we came from. When these American guys heard about it, they came up and they said, holy crap, this band is getting some people that like them. We might as well sign them to a record and see what we could do. I was very reluctant to accept it. And because, they were the man.
Right.
We were really super anti-establishment people. And so they were the establishment. Oh, no, we're not going to go there. And they just kept pursuing, and I kept saying, no, I don't want to know. And finally they said, okay, look, we'll let you do it yourself. You don't need to have a producer. You can do it yourself. We'll give you the key to the studio. We'll never see you. Do whatever you like, and we'll give you a lot of equipment. Well, the magic word was equipment.
Uh-huh.
Coming from a relatively modest means background, for someone to say we could then have equipment, something we couldn't buy on our own, that was a key word. None of us came from rich beginnings, so we played with whatever we could get. So to be able to go in the studio and get guitars and consoles and tape machines and shit like that to work with was a big reason I said okay. And my parents had to sign my first contract because I was too young. And my parents were not the type that really knew what the heck that was anyway. They go, oh yeah, you want to sign? I'm going to sign here. He's gonna go, sing in a microphone. That's what they would think I was talking about,
So Frank,
so that's how that started. And but the reason I'm telling you all this is because the origin of it, the first album, the second album, the third album, the fourth album, the origin was so different than what you mentioned when it finally became the late 70s. By the time of your mentionings, which is 78, 79, I was completely, by that time I was completely, not depressed, but disenchanted.
Good word.
With what it really had become. Because very quickly, in the beginning, it really was music. In the beginning, it really was fun. And you'd go and you'd play, and everyone sang Kumbaya or whatever, and everyone got along. But it became very competitive very quickly. And it was, I'm reminded of, that line when someone says, when Dorothy says, "This isn't Kansas," by the time I got up to doing the festivals and the big gigs and stuff, which was pretty soon, I saw that there was a kind of a difference about what I thought it was. I thought I was going to be playing Woodstock, basically, with those kind of people, and it ended up being anything but Woodstock.
Ultima.
It was a lot of backbiting and a lot of, fakery and bullshit. And I just didn't come from that line of thinking. I always thought next year would make it better, but it would just get worse and worse. And it was all about money. And you'd see it in the acts, you'd see it backstage, you'd see it when you'd meet people. Everyone was competitive. Nobody wanted to actually make music, they wanted to make money. And so that wasn't what I thought it would be. So I began to become very disenchanted with it, and the more it happened, the more I became disenchanted. And by 1983, it was about 10 years after it had all started, I just walked away from it.
Yeah.
I just said, I had done my 7th album for Columbia, I'd done 3 for 20th Century Fox, and I said, I'm not interested in this anymore. And everyone thought that I was kind of kidding. Certainly the guys in my band thought I was kidding. And but I wasn't kidding. And I was supposed to do one more record after Juggernaut for Columbia, and I just was so disenchanted with them that I said, no, I'm not, and it was my option, it wasn't even their option. And I said, no, I'm not doing it, forget it, I'm not doing it anymore. And I just stopped, and I did my own records when I wanted, 3 years, 6 years apart, when I felt like it. I did gigs when I felt like it, very few, and I just wanted to live the way I thought it was going to be, and that's what I've done ever since.
Yeah, no, well said.
And I didn't go, everyone said, because after you leave Columbia, the biggest record company in the world, and they tell you, you're never going to play again, and you're never going to do this again. They start freaking you out. They think they're freaking you out. Well, they freaked out all my other guys, but I didn't give a damn.
Yeah, at that point.
I really didn't like the rock scene. I thought it was not real. I kind of liked the jazz scene because I thought that those guys had a realer attitude about things. But certainly I wasn't going to join the jazz scene because I wasn't really a jazz player. If I'd have joined the jazz scene, I'd have been as fake as the other guys were in the rock scene. Some of them anyway. So I just did my own thing since then, and a lot less of it.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy with that. And look, when you've done the kind of shows I've done, the sizes and the big stadiums and the Cal Jam and all that, why would you even, so what? You've been there, you've done it, you sort of felt it. It isn't what you think it is. It isn't all it's cracked up to be. Why pursue it? That was my logic. I was just in my 20s. I started young, so by the time I was, 26, 27, 28, I was walking away from it.
Wow,
crazy.
I still had a lot of time ahead of me to do stuff that I liked.
Yeah.
And I liked racing cars, and I liked, doing other things too, playing hockey and whatever. So I got to just have a life that I liked, and music was a part of it. But I wasn't tied to it like some of these guys are, because I think, I can't honestly say that a lot of people in our industry are tied to it for money or chicks. I think what ties them to it, now that I reflect on it, I think what makes them continue like that, I think that they can't, a lot of them can't stand to know that they might be irrelevant.
Absolutely.
Right.
Like, they'll do whatever they can to stay relevant, and they'll even give away money to stay relevant.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I never really thought that applause was a reason to go kill yourself. You know, like I never really agreed with that. So, but I think that's what happens. I mean, ask yourself a question, like, take Angus Young, for instance, AC/DC, you know. AC/DC sort of, not that it's my kind of music, it isn't, but that's an example of an act that sort of built a brand, okay? Like, when you get an AC/DC recording, you know exactly what you're getting. It's not like a Mahogany Rush recording where you might have one song's blues, one song's jazz, or whatever. But something like AC/DC is a brand. And they took a long time to build that brand, and they stayed pretty true to it. So then they lose one guy, but then they get another one. But he sounds like the other one. And then they lose two more guys, the writer and, some serious problems. They have a lot of money. They have, $300, $400 million.
Yeah.
They don't really have to keep doing it. There comes a time when you wonder why they keep doing it. It can't just be, we need the money. You have to ask yourself, why is that? You don't need the money. You certainly don't need anything that it gives you, and it's quite hard to tour. Why do you keep doing that? Is it because you like music? Well, I like music. I like playing it, but why do I need to play it in the stadium? I can play it at home. So, or I can play it with my friends in some club where we jam. What's the difference if I play it in a stadium or I play it, let's say I go to your house and I play with you? What's the difference?
Yeah.
There's no difference except that people will be there applauding.
Yeah, that's right.
So you begin to wonder if that's what it's about.
Well, it is. I think it is. A lot of the time it is.
That's what it's about,
Of course.
I can't come up with any other reason.
The live buzz.
Well, I think it's a mix between money and applause.
Probably a little money in there too.
Well, there's no money in it, really, guys. I gotta listen. We don't make it. When I go on the road, I'm about to go on the road on tour,
Yeah.
and like, there's no money. I'm not gonna make money on that. I'll make a weekly salary if I'm lucky.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's so expensive to be on the road and tour. It's really expensive on a weekly basis, and you're lucky if you can get 4 or 5 gigs a week. Okay, you're not going to get 7 gigs a week. And there's in places that have shows on Monday and Tuesday or Sunday,
Yeah.
So you're going to try to make whatever you can and go on the road, and anyone will tell you this if they're being honest with you, if you're traveling and you've got people and you've got to feed them and you've got a bus and you've got all these things that you need in order to make it happen, that is really expensive, and it's almost never made up by the amount of money you're making at your tickets. Why do you think they sell merchandise?
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
And now, from what I understand, I won't do this, but from what I understand, a lot of the guys that I knew, now they're going out and they're selling tickets to
VIP?
meet them.
Yep,
Yeah.
VIP.
Okay? Which is ridiculous because I spent my whole life meeting everybody before and after every show I've ever done for free. Okay? You just meet people, that's what you do, right? You finished your show, you go, you meet people, like you're a normal guy.
Yeah.
But now they're selling this. And in the old days, you couldn't meet those guys even if you offered to pay them the money,
Yeah.
Right,
And
no,
now they're
exactly.
actually selling it as a ticket. And I'm thinking, what's the psychology behind that? Like, and a guy standing behind a rope line and being led into it at a time and sitting on your lap like you're Santa Claus.
Yeah,
I find
it's
there's
true.
something screwy about that. That's weird.
It's just
So the agents that we were going out this time, they even suggested it to me. They said, because I haven't been out in 10 years or 9 years. The agent said, and then we can add on the tickets for the meet and greet and all that. And I was like, no, what are you, nuts? Like, I'm not going to do that. That's like really hokey. and well, everybody's doing it. Yeah, but I'm not doing it. Okay?
You're a real purist. You're a purist.
No, but it's not a question of purist. Come on, man. Listen,
I agree with you.
let me ask you something.
We've been to these things.
You know what? If somebody gives you a guest pass, and we
Yes.
give them out to some people too.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
give it to you. Hey, here's a guest pass. You come back, meet Frank, whatever, meet the guys, blah, blah, blah. And they come back, they meet Frank, they meet the guys. But not to pay for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay for it. I didn't pay
It's
for
like
it.
ridiculous.
yeah.
I agree.
I'm not
I
saying,
agree.
listen, I meet people anyway. I always did. I always do. Okay? Anyone that knows me will tell you that. They'll say, yeah, Frank's like probably one of the most accessible guys in music. You know, I'm the guy that if I'm opening a show, when I'm finished, I go sit in the hall. You know, I don't hide out backstage. So I'm that type of guy. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people in the other bands used to be upset if I would do that if I was opening a show, especially at festivals. They'd say, you know, where are you going? Why are you going out there? And I'd say, well, I'm going out to watch the bands. They'd say, well, you know, you can't let the people see you or they'll think you're just like them.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, I am just like them. Why do you think you're not just like them? And
Cocaine.
Think about that. They'll think you're just like them. I think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Think about the mentality that goes with a guy that would actually believe what he just said.
Yeah, but Frank, the harder drugs like cocaine that played, everybody was doing in the late 70s, like, is that influence this type of behavior? Whereas, like you said,
no, it's not that. They're not high on. Yeah, they do their drugs. I haven't done a drug or a drink since I was 13 years old, and I'm 65. Okay, so everyone thinks I went through the business drinking and smoking and doing all that. I didn't. I went to a mental asylum on acid at 13, and after I came out, believe me, I never touched anything else. It's like 2-3 weeks ago, my wife finally got me to drink a sip of wine. I'm 65 years old. So,
and you're Italian,
I had to watch this stuff. Obviously, I was right in the thick of it with everybody for so many years.
Right.
Yeah, I was watching it happen. Yeah, they do the drugs. Yes, they do the coke. And when it wasn't always coke, but yes, it came along, and other things came along, and the Jack Daniels and everything else. Yeah, of course that's happening. But that's not why they act. Boy, not they. I shouldn't say they, because they're not all like that. But that's not why some of them do that weird I am so cool thing, okay? They just do it because they think, hey, I'm up here and you're down there. It's a weird kind of mentality.
You brought up Juggernaut. I mean, every time I hear Strange Dreams, it just brings me right back to the early 80s. That song was played on Show'em so much. It's like one of my favorite tracks from you, for sure.
Do you want to know what's funny about Strange Dreams, Jimmy?
Go ahead.
That's the only song I ever did. Is that Jimmy or Alan?
It was Alan, but
sorry.
it's okay. Don't worry.
You want to know what's funny about that song? It's the only song I ever did that doesn't have a guitar solo.
That's true.
Okay? It doesn't. There's no guitar solo in Strange Dreams except the live version has one.
It's that starting hook. It's got to be the starting hook then.
When they do a song that doesn't have a guitar solo, it's the only one that gets major radio.
That's right.
It's unbelievable. And that, by the way, that's when I left CBS.
Right.
I left Columbia right when I did that. I did that and I left Columbia.
That's a great album.
Stick around. I didn't do the next record. I didn't want to know. Even with the hits. I walked away while we were playing big places and doing all that. I literally walked away. Everyone thought I was nuts. They thought I was crazy. I was crazy. I didn't walk away when it was all going down the tubes.
Right.
It wasn't like I was trying to preserve a career. Couldn't give two shits about a career. I'm lucky to be able to do what I do, and someone actually pays me to do it. Like, what? Like, come on, man, we're not curing cancer. We're playing music. We're in perspective here, man. Really.
Frank, there must have been some sort of highlights. I mean, Metal Holocaust, Ozzy Osbourne, 1981, when you played that. And Randy Rhoads, you got to witness Ozzy with Randy Rhoads. I mean, what was your opinion if you did check him out?
Well, for me, by that time, I'd done billions of those, okay?
Right.
Billions, you know what I mean. I did Cal Jam, I did all kinds of things like that. So by that time, it was another show from a show perspective. But the fun thing about the Heavy Metal Holocaust was that I liked some of the guys that are in some of the bands, personally. I liked Lemmy, I liked talking to him. I like Ozzy. I like these people, and you'd laugh and you joke and hey, how you doing, blah, 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 and you're having a good time, like you went out to a club with people. But what did I do at the Heavy Metal Holocaust? I left the stage and went up and hung around with the crowd.
There you go.
No, did you check out Randy Rhoads?
And I met a lot of really cool people from Wales and from England, from all over the place, and we laughed and we took pictures and we drank a Coke and, So for me, that's the fun part.
Right.
It's not just necessarily the gig.
Okay.
Yeah.
The gig is fun. You're playing your music. Hey, people are liking your music. Of course, you don't want them to hate your music. I'm not being an idiot here.
Yeah.
But the point is, that's sort of not the reason I did it. The reason I did it was because it's fun. You get to meet people. You get to have fun. You get to be a normal guy. You know, I never had to go. I'm lucky in one sense. I never had a job. I never had a boss. I never had a producer. No one ever told me what to do. Since I didn't go to high school.
Wow.
Okay, so my life has been a life where I've been able to do what I like, and literally people sometimes would like it, and some people would pay me for it. That's a blessing, man. That's not me that made that happen. That's completely from God.
Yeah. But does your wife tell you what to do, though?
No,
no, I don't know.
We're 40 years together. Okay? So how do you last 40 years unless it's
you do what she says.
You know? And I have 3 daughters that think just like I do. So it's like, for me, guys, we're just really blessed to do what we do. I'm saying this to whoever's listening to you who actually plays music in a band.
What happened to the group? The group, you were trying to come up with your own concept, the group, what it was about.
Well, think about that. Me trying to do that was basically the internet by mail before the internet.
Right.
It was the same thing. You know, I wanted people to say that they could get involved directly. The whole idea of the group was supposed to be, you know how they're doing today, a Patreon, you support somebody type of thing,
Yeah.
Well, that was what I was hoping would happen, that people would join a thing and support, and then they'd be able to, like, call me up on the phone and say, Frank, would you do happy birthday for my sister? You know, I'd record it and send it to them, that type of thing. It was like the internet before the internet.
Right,
I had this idea of a kind of a Facebook, Twitter, one-on-one thing with fans before it even became the internet. And it never worked. I mean, people said, nobody did it, Listen, if I'd have been Mick Jagger and did it probably would have worked great. But what I was trying to do then was I was trying to change the paradigm of how we do things in the industry. That's what I wanted to happen. I wanted bands and people to realize that at the end of the day, if you like music, it's you and the band that gave it to you. And everybody else is in the middle of that. Everybody else is a gatekeeper. When a band does a record, it costs them, today it costs very little because everybody can do it at home on their computers.
Right.
So it costs the price of making the record, then it costs the manufacturing, which is maybe a couple of dollars, and then a band at best, in those days, the biggest bands in the world, their royalty on a record was no greater than $2, $2.50.
Yeah.
But the public was paying $20 for these CDs. And I was thinking, something's got to change here. Because if I can make a record and get my $2, I'm happy with my $2, and it costs $3 to make it and a couple of other things, maybe we could sell these things for $6, $7, $8 instead of $20 and get rid of all those people in the middle that are making the price go up for the fan.
Right.
And not only that, when you start putting all those people in the middle, what else do you get? You get people telling you, I need it by June, I need it by August, and we have to, now that record's done now, let's do another one, we have to do the tour. It was this whole system of money-making people that were bastardizing what art really was. If the most famous bands in the world would have said, hey, we'll do that, it would have worked. They would have done away with the record labels. I think the best thing that ever happened to the music business was that a bunch of 14-year-old kids figured out how to take it down.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the best thing that ever happened to the music business. Unfortunately, once that did happen, now all of a sudden, nobody wanted to make actually music anymore. It was just, hey, how can we get on this internet thing and pump stuff out as fast as we can?
Get hits.
And there was no filter anymore, and nobody cared about writing a good song anymore, or even learning how to play their instruments, because now the computer could play it for them, and they could auto-tune their voices, and they could do all kinds of things. Now everybody's a star, So in one way it was good because there's way less record companies, and those guys are they've largely been fired, okay?
Yeah, that's true.
But it never really turned into the one-on-one thing that I would have liked it to. Sort of is, but not quite.
Well, you're kind of doing that, right, with your DVD.
That's what I'm doing, yeah.
Exactly. And there's other bands like you, too, that are one-on-one with their fans. They care about the music. And,
yeah.
You know, there's other people like you out there, too.
And I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Almost out of time, so let's talk about this tour. Where are the live dates happening? Where?
So far, all I know is it starts on the 14th of April. It lasts a month at the moment. It might go longer, and it's in the United States. Now, there's going to be Canadian dates. You know, I don't know if they'll add them on. So far, there's no West Coast dates. It's just basically East Coast, Midwest, down to Texas, and then back, like a big circle.
Okay.
But, you know, the agents are saying, well, maybe, you know, we might get some offers to do more. Are you ready to do more if we can do more? I says, yeah, whatever. If it's as long as it's fun.
Right.
You know, like, but don't ask me to go do more just because we're going to make some money or you know, we have to do it. That's really not what drives me. You know, it's got, is it going to be fun? Are we going to have fun? Is it going to be loose? Are we going to do what we do?
Hey, Frank.
And I said, and don't talk to me anymore about selling, you know, tickets to meet the band.
I mean, you're out of the question.
We really hope there's a Canadian date, especially a Montreal date added to that tour. Because
you know, Frank, when Uli John Roth was here, which he was here a few months ago, or maybe it was like 6 months ago now, I think he was asking for you. He goes, "Where's Frank Marino? Where's Frank Marino?" I mean, what was your experience touring with Uli?
Look, Uli and I are good friends. I spent some time over there in England with him and Jack Bruce and Glenn Hughes, and we did this Legends of Rock tour, which Uli had actually called me up and said, "Do you want to come in because Michael Schenker is not doing it? Do you want to come in and fill in?" And I says, "Yeah." I says, "Can I bring my kids?" He says, "Yeah," because really all I cared about was bringing my kids because they went with me everywhere. I said, "Sure, I'll come and I'll do it," and I had a really good time with it, you know. But even over there, I mean, I stayed at his house for a long time, so I got to know him pretty well. And but even over there on that tour, you know, I saw things creeping into the actual touring, not you know, the people, but the actual touring was the same thing. They were doing autographings at the end of the night. As a matter of fact, I said that one night, and I kind of got in trouble because they said, "Okay, come on, we're going to go do the meet and greet." And I thought, okay, we're going to go meet people, which is what I always do. But then we all have to sit at a table. And I'm thinking, why are we sitting at a long table? And then I see this rope line, and they're letting them in two at a time, and they're coming up to this table, and they're meeting Uli, and then Glenn, and then, you know, Jack, and then me, and I'm like, and I said out loud, I said, "What are we, like Santa Claus here?" That they're letting us in time? and sort of they looked at me as like, "What are you saying?" You know? I said, "This is ridiculous. Look, they're 15 feet away. Why don't we just walk over there? What are we doing here? This is ridiculous, man. What are we doing? It's so stupid." And you know, you get people that come into that line and they want to talk a little longer. You know, you got some roadie rushing them along so they could get the next guy in. But even while they're rushing them along, there's all these other people waiting in line. They look like they're waiting for some at the license bureau or something. and it's like, and I could see on their faces, I see the people at the back of the line how they're just sort of shuffling their feet and trying to sit down. And, you know, it's like, I don't know, that's just too weird, man.
Yeah.
We could have walked into that crowd, you know, like you're at a cocktail party, stand around with people, have a conversation, shake hands, you know, have a Coke, whatever. But nobody wants to do that.
Well, Frank...
Everybody's all, like, formal, and I just don't think it should be. I don't think it should be like that.
Frank, we're out of time now. We respect your principles. Amazing guitar player, and we thank you very much for spending the time with us here today. This is fascinating. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again sometime.
Listen, whatever. You don't need to have to do an interview. Just call me. You want to talk?
Great.
Fine. You know?
Hey, we really appreciate it. You know, our many listeners, I'm sure, are going to appreciate this interview. And I want to thank you again for your time today.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.